Hello, I've been involved in the EPQ for around 10 years, which is about as long as I've been teaching. I've had training from AQA, I've met the guy that invented the EPQ, and I'm also centre coordinator for a centre that submits between 50 and 80 projects a year, so I've got a fair bit of experience. And so I decided to make a video just detailing some of the top 5 tips, as I say, that will help make a decent project at the end. Some of the things that people have fallen down a bit on over the years, over the projects that I've seen, that with just a little bit of tweak could have made it a better project, more marks, and a better outcome for the student. And hopefully, if you're aware of them, you won't fall into the traps. So first is to plan. So for the AQA EPQ, planning is A01. And you have to do your production log, the AQA documents. I don't know how you're doing that, whether you downloaded it and you're typing it or you're writing it in. Some centres now, lots are using Project Q. That's a really good way to do it because it imports all that information for you. But whatever you do, you've got to plan. And you get marks for planning. So 10 of the marks, 20%, are available for planning. So you need to show that you are researching, you need to show that you are doing something, that you've got a title, that you're going to investigate it. And a really good way to do this is use what we call SMART targets. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. And actually, some of these AO1 marks come from monitoring your progress. So if you can say, right, look, this is what I plan to do. I plan to do a certain amount of research or reading or write a certain amount of words. This is how I plan to do it. This is how I'm going to show that I've met that or not. So you might give yourself 3 or 4 weeks, right? I'm going to read this, write that, etc. This is how it's achievable because I'm going to fit it into this time in my week. It's relevant because it's going to help me do this in the project, and I'm going to check back in this date and see whether I've done it. Now, whether you hit those targets or not, hopefully you do, and you can write about that afterwards, but even if you don't, it's still relevant. It still shows that you've planned and how you're going to adjust your plan afterwards. As I say, you get marks for monitoring your progress. It's quite hard to show you've monitored your progress if you didn't have a plan in the first place, so you need to document it somewhere. The production log's a really good place to do that. You can have separate planning sheets if you want, but you can do it on the production log or Project Q. So that can go in your planning review, mid-project review, anywhere really. You can put a SMART target in, and then when you come to review again, so say in your planning review you put a SMART target in, then in your mid-project review you can come back to that and say, right, did I hit it or not? And so that will show really good planning and monitoring as well. The next thing is a good title, and actually I've seen people go down a route. They pick a difficult title or a title that's quite ambiguous. That's probably the problem, not necessarily the difficulty of the content, but it's ambiguous. They've set themselves too big a target or haven't specified enough, and it's really hard then to meet the goal. So you pick the target, and that's really important. You pick your title. And basically what you're getting tested on is whether you answer your question or not, or whether you achieve your objective. And you know, think about it. Your supervisors, the people marking this, they're not going to know as much about your project as you are. So how are they ever going to assess it? Well, actually, it's not necessarily the content that's the important thing. It's the progress and the process that you go through. And actually, what they can judge is if you've set yourself an objective or a target, they can judge whether you've hit that or not. And so that's why the title is quite important, because if you give yourself a good title followed up with good aims and objectives, then your marker, the person reading it, can then see whether you've hit those or not. You can document them later on. The feedback that we've had from the exam board is that a title that starts "to what extent" it isn't necessarily the best. You know, I've seen projects that have done well when they've started "to what extent did, I don't know, Russia involved in the war," whatever it may be. But actually, the problem that has been identified with that is actually the answer to most "to what extent" questions are "to some extent." So you're always going to have that, excuse me, that kind of sitting on the fence. You're not going to come down one side or another. So actually, you're better to be evaluative, comparative. You know, is this better than that, or has something changed and developed for the better? Where is it going to go in the future? So the title is better to be, you shouldn't be descriptive either, but you need to think about being comparative and evaluative in your title, and that's a really good thing. You can change your title. This is what students, I think, often get quite caught up on. You might have done your record of initial ideas and your Part A proposal, and later down the line you think, oh, actually I want to change or tweak my title or change it quite drastically. That's absolutely fine. You can do that, and it can be a good thing. It shows progress. It shows that you're taking decisions and problem solving, and as long as it's documented. So that's what I would say to you. So you can change your title, yes, but you must state what your new title is, why you've changed it, show that you can still research it, and give a commentary, show the examiner your thinking process, because you're showing progress and development. Sometimes it's better than just having one title that you've put in your record of initial ideas and it's the same throughout, because it's quite hard to show development. So that's another point to bear in mind. This kind of links back to what I was saying about the title. You do need aims and objectives. You should state what these are. Certainly in your production log, regardless of what type of project you're doing, you should say, right, this is the title of my project and this is what I aim to do with it. I think that's in the Part A candidate proposal. It says, what is your intended product? If you just say an essay, well, okay, I can see whether you've done an essay or not, but what are your aims and objectives? What are you trying to do with that essay? You need to be specific to your actual project. So you need to go into more detail about that. So that you can put it there in the production log. You can put it further along. You might have developed that in your planning review, and you might be saying, right, this is what I intend to do. These are the sides of the argument that I intend to give in my essay. And then when we're marking it afterwards, we can see, okay, yep, he or she did, or they them, did or didn't do that. If you're doing a written project, if you're doing an essay, you can set that out in your introduction. So you can say, look, this essay aims to do X, Y, and Z. And again, we can see whether you've done that in your writing. If you're doing an artifact, what you'll have is a brief, and you'll say, look, I'm making a bench or I'm building a drone, and these are the intended outcomes for that. You could talk about your intended audience. How are you going to assess whether it's been a success or not? All of those things you can put in a brief. So that might be a page that you put in the written section of your artifact. So you just need to be able to show whether you've met your aims and objective. And actually, you might not do, but as long as you're aware of that, not necessarily the worst thing in the world. You just need to say, if not, why was it hard to come to the conclusion that you thought you were going to come to, or what areas of the design didn't allow you to create the artifact that you wanted to in the end. Again, it's about being reflective. AO4, that's other marks that are available. Research. So this is an area that often lets students down when we come to mark. There's either not enough research, 3 or 4 sources, probably not enough for a 5,000 word essay, or the research is all the same, so it might be 20 sources, but they're all Wikipedia entries. Not good enough. So you need to research well. So you should be using, ideally, I can't think of a topic where you wouldn't be able to find some sort of credible peer-reviewed source or book. So JSTOR, Google Scholar, can you talk to experts? Can you get transcripts? You should be able to find research that's over and above Wikipedia, or just news articles. So a broad range of sources is also good as well. So not just from the same source. So it's not just the quantity of research, it's the quality as well. You need to cite this. So in your writing, you need to say what sources you've used and how you've used them. You need to look at referencing methods, and that will impact how you cite. So are you doing numbers in your number citations in your written work? Are you using the Harvard method? Are you using APA if you're doing social sciences, where you'd put the researcher's surname? So you need to use the research. So it's not just good enough reading a load of books and then writing an essay without mentioning them. That will not go down well. You will not get good AO2 marks for that. You need to use your research, and this affects your AO3 as well. So it's not just doing the research, actually using that in what you're doing, what you're writing up. You can also evaluate your research. You can evaluate your research in the production log. Is it a good bit of research or not? How do you know? How are you evaluating that? What are you judging as a good bit of research? You can put that in your production log, as I spoke about before, Project Q, or you can have a separate sheet. You should actually do it in the product as well. So if you're, by product I mean essay or artifact. So in your actual writing, you can say a well-regarded researcher showed X, Y, Z, and talk about. You might have a comparative point that you're making between two different sources, and then you might make a comment as to the reliability of those sources, or the how good you think those sources are, whether it's a book or whatever, because that will add to your marks as well in terms of research, and you can mention it in your presentation as well. So you're picking up marks throughout, but just make sure you're getting them in there. And then 5, almost last. I did say 5 tips, but a couple more at the end. But yeah, do remember that it is a research project, and so actually the outcome is not necessarily the be all and end all. So I've seen projects where the outcome has been amazing, but they haven't done the research side of it. They haven't documented the research. They must have done some, but they haven't mentioned their sources. They haven't shown their plan. They haven't shown how they've used them. And so the outcome looks great, but actually they didn't get great marks because they didn't document it. So remember that actually the process, the project queue or the production log is as important, if not more. Technically, there are probably more marks available for the process, the research side of it. The EPQ is a research project, and so actually the outcome, and as I've said before, you're going to be more an expert on your area than anyone marking it will be, and so you need to document this process to allow your marker to see the journey you've been on, and that's where you're picking up these marks for the AO1, the planning, the AO2, the resources, AO3, develop and realise. This is where the aims and objectives come in again. Have you reached your aims and objectives? Have you developed and realised? And the AO4, the reflection. That will come in a moment. It doesn't matter. Some students think, oh, if I've changed my title or if I've struggled, that means I failed. No, every bit of research is difficult, and it's not a straight process. It's not a linear process. You'll make good progress and then fall back and change your ideas, and that's absolutely fine. You just need to document it all. So put it into the production log, get it in there somewhere, what the issues were and how you found them and how you overcame them. You actually get marks for problem solving, for decision making, for creative thinking. So document as much as you can. Remember to document your process. A production log is quite good. So maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, you're documenting what you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling about your project, and you can submit that as well, because that will show the process too. I did say 5 tips, but I'm going to add another couple. Strengths and weaknesses. AO4, I've seen some really good AO4 in the past. There's a summary and reflection section of the production log, so that's normally done quite well. You can add that into your presentations as well, but reflecting on strengths and weaknesses is a good thing to do. And the other thing is spell check. So quite often, I don't think Project Q has spell check, and it looks as though quite often when I get research back, when I get projects back, people haven't spell checked, I haven't proofread their work, and actually it can take away from the marks. So you get marks for clear communication in AO3 and AO4. So if you've done the best project in the world and it's littered with spelling mistakes and it's hard to read, you're not going to get top marks because it wouldn't be clear. So my other extra tips. Hopefully that's helpful.